Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. Well, I had a good question come in that I thought I would answer. Usually this is something I might approach in a this and that video, but I thought instead I'd rather do a quick standalone video on this because it's a great question. And somebody was asking why we don't put a root cellar in here. Now, yes, I have talked about root cellars before. I don't always think to bring it up, but it is an excellent way if you're growing especially a lot of root veggies or apples and pears. There's certain tree fruits that will hold very well and last for months and months in cold storage like a root cellar. And so if you have the ability to put one in, yes, I highly recommend it. But why wouldn't we do that here? Well, there's two reasons why. One is if you're talking about putting it here on this particular lot where we live, where we do most of our self-sufficiency practicing stuff, rather than our little piece down the road, we would have room down there to put one. But here, there's no space. We have no space to put a root cellar here. Everything is taken up by garden space, our little mini orchard, our chickens, our shop, our firewood storage, and the like. So we don't have the space here. But here is actually the number one reason why we probably would never put in a root cellar. Because most people in our area, there's very few homes around here that have basements. And there's very few people that have root cellars for the same reason, because we live in a place that gets a lot of rain. And I know every time I say this, I'll go get people from Oregon, Seattle that think they get a lot of rain. And they do in comparison to like Eastern Washington that gets only maybe 10 inches of rain per year. Most of these places I'm mentioning get about 40 to 60 inches of rain per year. We get 2 to 3 times that much per year. So imagine if you're living in one of those wet places and you think you're getting a lot of rain, you get 40 to 60 inches, like, west coast of Oregon. Consider that much and at least double it and more. So our low average here is 120 inches. When I first came to this area, the average was 144 inches, and we can easily get 160 inches in a year. And most of that is within a 9-month period. In fact, most of that is in a 6-month period that's broken up. So you got about 3 months of fall and then 3 months of spring. Midwinter isn't so bad, and summer is obviously our lowest time for rain, but it doesn't mean we don't get it. So what that means is the bulk of that rain comes in only about half of the amount of the year. We're in that time of the year as of the time I'm shooting this video, and it just comes down in buckets, and it can do that all day long. Our grounds get saturated. We've had rain sometimes so heavy that we've had flooding in our yards and even flooded out our chicken coop on one occasion. That's pretty rare that it gets that bad, but it does happen. So just imagine if we had a root cellar or a basement, what kind of complications we might be looking at. And I do know of some of the few places around here that do have basements and have had them for many years because they were put in the 70s. Guess what they have? Problems with leakage. And so then they have to spend a lot of money redoing a whole bunch of stuff and making dry wells and whatnot to get the water to go away from their home so they can stop the leakage. And so a lot of times it also involves rebuilding a few things too. So it would take a lot of extra money and extra time to put in a root cellar that did not leak. And that's just not something we want to deal with. So if you're considering a root cellar, you really got to closely consider where you live, the kind of a rainfall you get, or your water table. There's a lot of things that need to be taken into account. But there are many other things that people can do to have a cold storage that doesn't require electricity. Like I've mentioned in the past that Patrick's dad, he grew up in North Carolina, and they had a spring house. They didn't have any electricity, but they had a spring house. And that's where they kept a lot of their things cool throughout the year. And that was their refrigerator. So that is an old method. Then if you live in a place that gets a lot of ice in the winter, you can make ice houses. This was also very common a couple hundred years or so ago. So just remember, there are other options, and you have to, when it comes to your food storage, you have to work with not just your space, not just your finances, but your climate and just simply what's going to work best for you. So yes, I thought I'd answer that question, but also use it as an opportunity to remind people that that is an option for some, but there are other options that you can look into for a cold storage that doesn't have to take electricity to use. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have any thoughts, ideas, or suggestions, please share them in comments down below, because my followers really appreciate that. The interaction, really just learning from each other. This is another great thing about YouTube or even Rumble. It's a really excellent way to open up dialogue and get some fresh ideas, even if they're old ideas that maybe people never talk about anymore because they've simply forgotten. And thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.